It also highlights targeted support for achieving land degradation neutrality, gender-responsive implementation, and the inclusion of vulnerable communities. Areas addressed include sand and dust storms, dust storm management, drought resilience, and the development of tools and training platforms such as the capacity building marketplace. Conclusions and recommendations presented in the document offer pathways to further enhance and sustain capacity building efforts under the UNCCD framework, with an emphasis on innovation, partnerships, and synergies among the Rio Conventions. To take this further, I am joined on the podium by panelists to give their perspectives and insights on this agenda item. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the UNCCD Secretariat. I now have the honor to welcome our distinguished panelists who will speak on this topic. I would like to introduce our panelists. Mr. Tadenda Lehmann, Center for Development and Environment, Mr. Patrice Burger, Chair and Founder of the Center Action of the Relations Internationals, Mr. Khalid Cherki, Head of International Cooperation, Ministry of Agriculture, Maritime Fisheries, Rural Development, and Water and Forest of Morocco, Ms. Helen Guichet, Early Career Scientist Fellow on the UNCCD Science Policy Interface. After the panelists deliver their remarks, there will be an opportunity to make statements. I now give the floor to Mr. Lehmann.
Can I get the presentation? Distinguished delegates, distinguished chairs, good afternoon. Thank you very much to the chair and to the UNCCD Secretariat for this opportunity to present how WOCAT is supporting the UNCCD Secretariat as well as the parties building capacities and expertise. Just before we dive into that, I would like to give you a very short refresher on WOCAT. So WOCAT is a global network on sustainable land management experts, which was established more than 30 years ago, just after the Rio Summit in 1992. It is formalized by the framework agreement signed by the 7 consortium partners, which you can see listed here on this slide. And it bases on its organizational and individual members who are bringing in the individual and the organizational expertise. So far, WOCAT was mainly founded by the Swiss Development Corporation and the German Federal Ministry for Economic and Cooperation Development. But to address now the growing demands from the UNCCD parties, from projects, from programs and initiatives, as well as to recognize really the need to decentralize and establish WOCAT regional clusters, we are very happy to launch our new WOCAT Multi-Donor Basket Fund, which will be hosted by the UNCCD on next Thursday here in Met 4. So please join us to make this first step towards a more sustainable financing mechanism, and you're welcome to join the WOCAT partnership. I mentioned the trust fund and the regional clusters because they are key for our key strategic efforts for really effective capacity building. Facilitating knowledge exchange as well as partnership at intra-regional level to foster collaboration is at the heart of WOCAT. And therefore, we want to bring together all organizational members in the regions as regional clusters. In addition, of course, we align the efforts across programs, initiatives to really maximize impacts and avoid duplication. I'm sure some of you got already approached by us when we had some projects or programs in your countries to really link these programs and projects to the UNCCD praise reporting and to bring this national or local knowledge to a national level and to bring it into the reporting. So we are also focusing very much on a continuing on-the-job capacity building rather than just a one-off training. And we really want also, in addition, to streamline our tools and methodologies for really considering effective use. In addition, we realized, or we heard over the last few days as well, at the last CRIC 21, that many parties are still in need of capacity. They are requesting for capacity development. And we also realized that government bodies often do not find the time to participate in capacity building activities. And I think really this we have to take into consideration when we are developing future capacity development frameworks, that we do it timely and in a very productive manner to really have the stakeholders in this capacity developments we really need to have. Coming to the WCAT database, which is since 2014, the UNCCD official recognized platform for the documentation and sharing good practices. So you, the UNCCD parties, can report the good practices from your countries as the best practices towards the convention. For that, you can use the linked praise system, but as we have seen in the last praise 4 reporting period, hardly any country was reporting good practices toward the convention. And here we are very happy, or we would be very happy to continue our collaboration with the Secretariat to better link the praise system to the sustainable land management practices on the ground, to bring this knowledge into the platform and to support the countries in documenting and reporting. So already 136 countries, you will find good practices in our database, and information will not only be available in the database itself, it's also available through an application program interface in many other platforms and databases at a very different level. Here just an example, the Framework for Ecosystem Restoration Monitoring, which shows good practices from WCAT. But the other example would be the G20 Global Land Information Hub or the Great Green Wall Observatory. So those are all the platforms where these good practices are available to really ensure the sustainable land management knowledge is available for all the different stakeholders who are working in this field. Over the last decade, the collaboration between WCAT and the UNCCD Secretariat was strengthened, finally culminated the last COP in 5 COP decisions, where WCAT, related to WCAT, on the use of the database, the integration into CHEF projects, capacity building, and gender responsiveness on sustainable land management practices. So we are taking this mandate serious and developed together with the UNCCD a new gender tool on gender responsive SLM, which was launched at the Gender Caucus on last Saturday. Also, we linked the drought as well as the sand and dust storm relevant good practices from the WCAT database to the UNCCD sand and dust storm toolbox to make this knowledge available there as well. And in addition, we supported the different parties on reporting on land degradation neutrality, but as well on integrating sustainable land management practices. So, the land degradation neutrality support for the countries, we developed together with FAO and various different countries these tools which really allows the integration of global as well as national and local data and information across the different levels. It is a participatory tool which is actually available for GIS, which for GIS does not really need the GIS expertise, and it brings together all different stakeholders. It has been presented already during the last CRIC quite intensely, and also we just presented some good examples from the countries in the new publication that we developed together with UNCCD. I think it was last Friday in a side event at COP. So if you still need one of these examples of these books, please visit us in our WCAT pavilion or at the GOLDN pavilion. But how we bring this now to scale, we made this experience with the parties. We got very good feedback as well, and now we want to bring this to scale with a new CHEF medium-sized project, where we are actually focusing on hybrid areas and small island development states. So South-South exchange workshops and online learning events then will also be organized beyond those focus areas. And all participating countries and other interesting non-participating parties can join us as well and as active actors. So if you are interested to get more information on these new CHEF projects, which hopefully will start early next year, and where we will include 10 to 12 countries coming from hybrid areas or small island development states, please join us in the informal consultation meeting on December 11th at the WOCAT Pavilion at A14. And with that, I would like to give over to you. Thank you very much. And I'm very much looking forward to future collaboration in the next reporting cycle with the UNCCD Secretariat as well as the UNCCD parties. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Lehmann, and now give the floor to Mr. Burger.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues in combating desertification, I'm pleased to take part on behalf of CARI, a French NGO. I'm going to tell you about our thoughts and recommendations concerning capacity building. I'd like to begin by sharing some prior reflections with you. In fact, I've been present at 14 COPs. I'm perhaps one of the oldest participants in these conferences, so I've seen quite a lot of what's gone on over the past 30 years of the convention. First of all, the subject of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification is often misunderstood. That's because there are too many people who still muddle desertification with the advance of deserts. So we're talking about a complex process of land and soil degradation, in fact, which leads to desertification and has the impact of destroying ecosystems and impoverishing people who live in these places. In order to understand the urgency of combating desertification, we need to understand the relationships with food, farming, soils, stocking and filtering of water, biodiversity, carbon sequestration and storage. And a concept of land degradation neutrality requires quite a lot of explanation in itself. So all of these notions are pretty complex. They're not easy to grasp. We need to understand exactly how the convention works. Its 5 annexes, its subsidiary bodies, the CST, the CRIC, the SPI, and the links with the other conventions, the role of states, the role of international organizations and the private sector, and civil society organizations. Over the course of time, I've met many grassroots activists and leaders as well, including negotiators. And I can tell you, we really needed capacity building at all levels. Yesterday, I was lucky enough to take part in a journalist trip to the north of the country, and I was very surprised to learn that these journalists didn't have basic information about the country. Nevertheless, they were going to write articles about combating desertification. I'd also like to inform you that the convention will never be able to achieve its goals unless there is a broad-ranging plan for capacity building, from awareness raising to vocational training. If you want to act, you have to understand it first. So there are various ways of undertaking awareness raising amongst debutantes to awareness raising among professionals, and also providing them with in-depth knowledge, what we would refer to as the state agencies and focal points, who would be the real experts, is absolutely vital for building methodology, pedagogy, and the contents for the different target audiences. You can't really build capacity without undertaking a prior analysis. There are a number of obstacles on this path. This is because we haven't had the right approach to capacity building. I'll tell you about them now. First of all, in actions and programs, capacity building is often sidelined. It's considered to be too expensive, time-consuming, so it's not one of the top priorities, and nor is it well funded across the board. Also, when it comes to organisation staffing, including at state level, we don't have enough staff who remain in their posts. So knowledge is lost, the institutional memory is lost, and you have to start from scratch over and over again. Then, when knowledge is produced, it's often not accessible or easily acquired. There's plenty of information on the site, but you have to really search for them, and it takes a long time to read and understand them. So you really need to be committed. Not everyone's got that commitment. There's too many obstacles to list them all, but to save time, I'll give you some examples of what my organisation, Carry, has done over the past 30 years. We were really attracted by the high level of participation in the conference. We felt that we needed to interact, mobilise and support civil society participation. So the conference is part of our activities. When it comes to NGOs, we try to enhance their organisation. Example, in France, we've set up a working group of NGOs involved in combating desertification. We also approached the National Committee on Desertification. It wouldn't be possible for NGOs to work on there, and they needed scientific support. And we also reached out to the public at large, and what we've been doing is been working together, NGOs, the National Committee and on Desertification, and public authorities. So we build each other's capacity. In 2017, we also set up a national network, DryNet, of NGOs which are accredited to the conference. It's present here now, and it's a great framework for NGOs so that they can build each other's capacity, and that work feeds into their participation in the conference. In 2009, in Buenos Aires at COP9, we felt that civil society organizations needed to have better recognition of their participation, so we fought for a representative panel with NGOs so that we could interact with each other. So COP9 took the decision to create a representative panel of NGOs, and a very large number of decisions then ensued. And today, quite different from what it was in the early days, NGOs can take the floor on almost any subject. They can set out their positions, and I think that they do contribute to the work of the conference, and that is certainly a way of capacity building. Then, moving towards stakeholders now, including the parties to the conference, in 2003, COP6 in Havana, we published a document called Civil Society and Desertification References to Understand and Act. So that was in 2003, in the very early days of the convention, and we noticed that delegates were a bit lost, so we published that document in 3 languages and disseminated it in Cuba. It wasn't just the NGOs that picked it up, it was almost all the delegates who made a dash for that document, because it was a really pedagogical document which gave you some basic information about the subjects at stake. In 2007, our state, France, called on us to draft the French strategic document. I'm not trying to hold up France as a good example, but I'd just like to say that when we have a dialogue with public authorities, it means that we are then in a position to draw up a strategic guidelines document with the other stakeholders and then publish it. In 2011, I had the honour of being elected to present and advocate for the UNCCD at a special session of the General Assembly, and I think that's all part of capacity building as well, for us and for all those that we interact with. Now, looking at the public at large, we have to keep things simple, so on a number of occasions we have created almanacs. They're based on cartoons drawn by Tuareg children, and we then disseminated them in southern France in the schools, and that helped teachers talk about how to combat desertification, nomadic pastoralism, and the convention, and other subjects. In 2006 and later in 2017 and 2015 and 2022, we launched the International Summit for Desert Action. The summit was held on a number of occasions in Montpellier in France, then Strasbourg, and then Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso, and which will be held once again in 2026 in Tunisia. It's a meeting which brings together the various stakeholders that are preparing the next conference of parties. So meet us in Tunisia. There'll be between 250 and 450 people from around 60 countries attending that meeting. And we prepare the topics that are going to be discussed at the forthcoming COP. We have also worked with local authorities. You probably know that town councils and local councils are on the front line. They're the ones who implement the conference's decisions. And all too often, they've got no information, they're not prepared, and they have to implement issues which they haven't been involved in at all. So in 5 Sahel countries, Senegal, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and Mali, we've been training local authorities so that they can become protagonists in water resource and land management plans. We provide them with institutional and technical information so they're better prepared. With regard to the convention itself, on a number of occasions, our organisation has attended and been part of the civil society organisations panel and at the science policy interface and also at the intergovernmental negotiations and discussions on the midterm evaluation of the convention. So this has been our role, and we've also made some funny posters which draw attention to some of the obstacles and bottlenecks in the convention. Of course, this is all backed up by campaigns on radio and TV, and I'd like to round off by saying that capacity building is an attitude, it's a commitment in the long term, and we need a structured and well-funded plan. That's what we want so that the convention can achieve its goals. Thank you very much.
I thank Mr. Burger. I now give the floor to Mr. Cherik.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, Mesdames et Messieurs.
Thank you very much, Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates. Firstly, I'd like to thank the organisers for inviting me to this important event, which deals with capacity building, which is very important, and promoting capacity building in furtherance of the implementation of the Convention. Therefore, I'd like to back what was said by my colleague from the Carry Association. Indeed, capacity building must be covered by a plan with a structured approach, since capacity building is horizontal in nature, and it allows for the implementation on the ground of programs, projects, and initiatives. Therefore, it should be approached as a program where we define which capacities do we need, which stakeholders need their capacities built, what are the means of implementation, and also how we can structure all of these factors. At present, there is a need to scale up capacity building, and at present we are in a context marked by an upward trend in land degradation across the world. We're at 100 million hectares per year, 12 million hectares per year, and therefore structured action for capacity building is needed. Of course, this needs to be combined with financing. Droughts are becoming more and more significant, and therefore capacity building in this regard must be taken very seriously. Sometimes we see programs and initiatives which come to a close, and then there are funds which remain. Decisions are taken to arrange capacity building sessions. Indeed, that can be beneficial. But as I've already said, we need to really engage in an in-depth diagnosis of needs on the ground. The combat against desertification and drought is indeed done on the ground at the community level. And therefore, this needs to be taken into account when we develop strategies. There are some topics which stand out where we need to work on together, including technical aspects of land restoration, aspects regarding project formulation, monitoring and follow-up, negotiations, fundraising, public reporting and communication. These are all critical aspects. Also, there is entrepreneurship, adding value to natural resources. All stakeholders in the combat against desertification require this, because to be heard, to be understood, the projects need to be presented not only as environmental projects, but also as social economic development projects. And they should be a tool. We need tools so as to indeed showcase their social economic impacts. This needs to be done in public reporting efforts, at the national level with the ministries of finance, at the local level with stakeholders. And here, national focal points are indeed involved in this coordination effort. With the African group, we developed a plan of action for the African group where we underscored one very important thing. That is the need to elaborate a simple methodological guide on what the focal point is supposed to do in terms of them working in mobilization in communities, finding partners from within the state, but also they need their capacities to be built in terms of conveying messages. When you're dealing with the public sector, indeed, your way of conveying messages is different compared to when you're dealing with the state or communities. There are various actions that can be quite affordable, quite cheap, but their impacts can be very significant. Indeed, we've spoken about Earth observation and reporting and other factors, but all this needs to be incorporated into structured action. You have to think about who will do this. There are actions that can be undertaken by institutions, be it at the regional level. Funding is needed in that case. But I think we need to develop a capacity building plan so that we can ensure that we can work out which activities will be taken out over time, who the beneficiaries will be, and develop the means of implementation. And this would be aimed at avoiding a fragmented approach, developing a structured approach, so that we can ensure that we have specific impacts on the ground. What's very important when it comes to capacity building is that you need to ensure there is knowledge transfer. When it comes to temporary capacity building measures and institution building, that's important. But when you have train-the-trainer sessions, that's also very important. You need to have ownership on the part of these communities and a proper transfer of knowledge. Therefore, in summary, capacity building is indeed an asset. It's a means of implementation for all our projects, which refer to the strategic objectives of the Convention. Therefore, what we really need, as I've said, is a capacity building plan, which might be broken down at the national level. And also, I need to have more synergies. I know there are several initiatives which are being launched. There are several institutions at the regional and sub-regional levels working on this. Sometimes they overlap. Sometimes they step on each other's toes. And therefore, you need to have someone who's actually coordinating and orchestrating all that. I think the convention is the best option. That it needs to be given the mandate to go in that direction in terms of coordinating institutional actions at the sub-regional and regional level, and to form synergies between these efforts, identifying important topics, beneficiaries, carrying out evaluations, while focusing on the transfer of knowledge at the local level, regardless of who you're dealing with. It might be state actors or civil society, etc. And to round off, indeed, going back to the plan of action developed with the African group, we dealt with the issue of capacity building in negotiations. And we knocked on the doors of several institutions, and ultimately we were able to get some support, but it was deficient in some respects, and therefore the issue of having a structured plan of action and synergies, partnerships, pooling of resources, all these factors are so important. Thank you very much.
I thank Mr. Cheriki. I now give the floor to Ms. Guichet.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, distinguished delegates. And first and foremost, I would like to thank the UNCCD for extending the invitation for me to participate in this capacity building panel discussion. My name is Helen Gichenja, and in 2021, I was selected as one of 2 early career scientists as part of a fellowship program to contribute to the work of the UNCCD Science Policy Interface. This was as the first cohort of this fellowship program. Oh. It's moved very fast, excuse me. Okay. My short reflections will focus on 3 ingredients: incubation, inclusivity, and innovation. And these 3 ingredients could catalyze the UNCCD's capacity building efforts, as well bridge the gap between global frameworks, such as our work here, and local actions. Distinguished delegates, allow me to digress a little bit for just a moment here and reflect on what I was doing immediately before coming to COP16. I took this photo at sunrise facing Mount Kenya on the morning as I left my village to catch a flight to Nairobi. On this same morning, thousands of smallholders were also waking up to make decisions on their livelihoods. Their livelihoods decisions shape land use and shape landscapes, such as shown here closer to my village. On my ancestral home, which is a typical smallholder farm of 5 acres with mixed farming, I had a conversation with my mother on where we should plant the seedlings shown to the right, because the short rains had failed, and we debated between the two of us whether we should instead wait to plant these seedlings during the long rains starting in April. Distinguished delegates, a pause for our collective reflection. Like me, I'm sure many of you can relate to how our lives seamlessly move from our role here shaping global frameworks to the local decisions that shape local land use. Moving more substantively on my first point in terms of incubation, a little bit about the Early Career Fellowship Program. This fellowship program of the SPI is a voluntary program where fellows are selected to support the work of the SPI. The SPI's role is to translate scientific findings to policy-relevant recommendations that can support your role as decision makers. The SPI produces technical reports, as shown on the screen, but also some of you may have received these documents as well as policy briefs, ensuring that these products are rigorously reviewed, relevant, and actionable. The SPI also works to empower you to make decisions by translating these documents into effective decisions with a solid scientific foundation. As a member of the SPI for the last 3.5 years, I can personally attest to the value of this platform, not just in terms of the tangible outcomes and products that we produce, but also in terms of personal enrichment, cultivation of leadership, and advocacy skills. So what I would advocate is that we should have more of these incubation platforms within the UNCCD. And for example, paid internships, paid apprenticeships, programs to nurture new and young talent, as well as ensuring that we institutionalize incubation programs to develop the next leaders on desertification, land degradation, and drought. And I think, borrowing from the words of Patrice, we need sort of structured, well-funded programs. On my second point on inclusivity, while the membership of the SPI has been commendable in terms of achieving gender parity as shown, regional representation, but also in terms of ensuring a wide range of disciplines amongst the members, from political science to social science and economics, what does inclusivity really look like in practice, and particularly in decision-making spaces? So we should encourage the UNCCD to create opportunities for young scientists and practitioners. And during the panel discussion, we've heard of tangible ways how. Also to promote youth-led initiatives, and also to target marginalized groups, particularly now with the lead up to the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists, targeted interventions for herders and pastoralists. We've heard from others about networks for NGOs, and those could be some of the examples. On my third point on innovation, we've heard from WOCAT, a number of the platforms, but also the UNCCD has made great strides supporting the development of tools and digital platforms, particularly for monitoring and reporting. But we need to be cognizant that due to the limited digital literacy, the limited digital infrastructure, these tools may be sometimes difficult for stakeholders in remote and underserved areas to access. So how can the UNCCD exploit artificial intelligence, digital technologies in their capacity building efforts? Some potential areas to explore are AI-powered analytics to process satellite images and climate data, as well as mobile apps, but mobile apps that are driven by citizen science to give us updates on weather as well as network trends. Distinguished delegates, in conclusion, our capacity building efforts can be contagious between the global level, as we find ourselves here in Riyadh, as well as local actions like planting trees on smallholder farms in the case of my mother. This can be achieved by embedding incubation platforms within the UNCCD to train and mentor new and young talent, by targeting inclusive development of youth, women, indigenous people, and marginalized communities in decision-making roles, as well as by leveraging on new technologies and approaches to empower individuals and communities with data and evidence. Collectively, we can bend the curve to a more resilient future. Thank you for your attention.
I thank Ms. Helen Guichenier. Before proceeding further, we will view a pre-quoting statement by Mr. Ludwig Ljöger, founder of Rio Impact, and conclusion of the Joint Rio Convention Capacity Building Program.
Dear participants, honorable delegates, it's a real pleasure to contribute today to this important discussion on the role of capacity building to advance the implementation of UNCCD's objectives. My name is Ludwig Ljöger, Managing Director at Rio Impact, and I will share with you today insights into the progress and the implementation of the Rio Convention's Joint Capacity Building Program, which is an initiative that was launched by the 3 Rio Convention Secretariats under the mandate of the Joint Liaison Group at the end of 2023. Well, all the content developed as part of the Rio Convention Joint Capacity Building Program, you can find it on a dedicated webpage that you can access scanning the QR code here on the slide. We are working to update the webpage so you'll be able to find always the latest information in there. Well, our program focuses on 2 primary objectives. First, to enhance individual, institutional, and systemic capacities for achieving synergies between climate action, biodiversity conservation, and sustainable land management. And secondly, to improve the coordination and the coherence in implementing the Rio Convention's objectives alongside the Sustainable Development Goals. Our target audience focuses on the national level with national institutions, state and non-state actors involved in the development of strategies, design of projects, and of financing solutions to achieve the Rio Convention's objectives. This year, 2024, has been really important for us to shape the program. Consultations with national focal points and partner organizations were organized at the beginning of the year that helped us develop the first training modules and a first concept for an online knowledge sharing platform. We could test the first training, in the context of the UNFCCC subsidiaries bodies meetings in Bonn in June. And we also organized a side event in that context together with UNDISA on the importance of synergies. Training sessions were further organized in the context of the CBD COP in Cali and in Baku a few weeks ago, where we discussed the role of national adaptation plans to foster synergies. Several other training sessions were organized together with youth organizations, in particular Youth for Capacity and Youth for Climate. Well, this gives you an idea of some of our trainings and a webinar series we've launched earlier this year that has covered several key topics for synergies, including joint planning processes, synergistic project design and resource mobilization. And actually, we've got a third webinar this week on December 12th on the role of local and indigenous knowledge for synergies. You're all welcome to attend. We are trying to share the information on these trainings, opportunities, and webinars through social media communication, but we always welcome support to disseminate the information, and please don't hesitate to share within your networks. To address the diverse needs and priorities in terms of capacity building, we are working on a diversity of formats. This includes the webinars and the in-person hybrid trainings I was mentioning before, but also we are currently working on self-paced e-learning modules, as well as tailor-made national training sessions and potentially regional activities as well, so that we can ensure accessible and flexible learning opportunities for all stakeholders. Besides, we are putting a lot of emphasis on quality knowledge products, which are really at the core of our initiative. This includes, for example, info-briefs, but also guidelines on how to build synergies, and tools that provide practical entry points for achieving synergies. These resources can actually support integrated planning processes between NAPs and DCs, and BSAPs and LDN targets, and cover topics that range from mobilizing finance for synergistic projects to enhancing the role of local and indigenous knowledge. And we are also addressing currently the topics related to joint monitoring and reporting, and the question of how to manage trade-offs between the Rio Convention's objectives. Our approach emphasizes collaboration with key partners, from knowledge dissemination to joint development of training initiatives. Partnerships are essential to leverage expertise and maximize impact. Besides, we are targeting tangible outputs for our trainings, such as integrated investment strategies that will further ensure that the capacity building efforts actually lead to actionable outcomes at country level. So all initiatives, programs, and organizations that contribute to the implementation of Rio Convention's objectives are key allies for us, such as the NDC Partnership, the NBSAP Accelerator Partnership, the Global Mechanism of the UNCCD, among others. They will all help to disseminate the knowledge and ensure we develop practical solutions for countries. We really believe capacity building on synergies is fundamental for advancing implementation of all three Rio Convention's objectives in an efficient manner, addressing positive joint outcomes as well as the trade-offs. So the program can support the collaboration among key ministries, local authorities, and non-state actors for coordinated responses to desertification, land degradation, and drought. So we can see really the program as an ally to advance the DLDD agenda as well as the LDN targets. By aligning national policies and facilitating access to funding solutions, the program can also enable integrated projects that promote sustainable land and ecosystem management. Finally, I encourage you to explore more about the program on our dedicated webpage, and I really hope we can build collaborations with some of your organizations in advancing capacity building for the synergies. So with that, I'd like really to thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you great success in today's discussions.
I open the floor for the representatives of parties and observers who wish to make a statement. Please press the microphone button if you wish to make a statement. I give the floor to the representative of Ecuador.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the panelists for their presentations. Mr. President, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the group of countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. The countries in our region commend the Secretariat's efforts to enhance capacity building under this convention. We particularly appreciate the time, effort, and dedication put into preparing for the upcoming reporting process. We recognize that there are still gaps in the data tools and the standardization of technology used to report progress in implementing the Convention. There are also gaps on how to report with respect to the unique realities and existing circumstances at the national and regional levels. We need to increase investment in accurate and comprehensive national data, including in issues such as soil organic carbon and land productivity. With this in mind, we urge to prioritize increasing investments for training and capacity building to developing countries, including small island development states, least developed countries, and middle-income countries, as well as for providing technical support to reduce the gaps in reporting aimed to ensure a more accurate and complete information on the global implementation of UNCCD. This would greatly improve local, national, and regional capabilities to carry out the next PRICE 5 reporting process. Having more precise data will ensure that the goals and ambitions are realistic and relevant to the unique and existing circumstances at national and regional parties. It is equally important to facilitate the increase in technical exchange at the global and regional level on national experiences to streamline actions and improve implementation and reporting to the Convention. In this context, we urge all parties to the UNCCD to support the enhancement of capacity building through a holistic approach, including the consideration of gender, indigenous people and local communities, and access of civil society contributions to improve reporting that ultimately will contribute to strengthen decision-making processes supported in scientific data and information for the implementation of the UNCCD Convention in our respective countries. This is also in line with other efforts in our region, including through the Escazú Agreement. We further encourage relevant groups and external partners to continue to respond to the capacity needs expressed by parties and to provide sustainable, new and additional funding for capacity building activities that assist parties in the implementation and reporting of the Convention at national, sub-regional and regional levels. Finally, we consider that establishing better collaboration and partnerships with regional institutions, initiatives and organizations for providing data and technical support to this reporting process will be a key element for a successful PRICE 5 reporting process. To this end, we look forward to working collaboratively and on this important issue. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Ecuador. I give the floor to representative of European Union.
Thank you very much, Chair, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. The EU and its member states acknowledge that the UNCCD plays a critical role in addressing land degradation, drought, and the challenges facing affected populations. The EU and member states welcome the commendable efforts of the UNCCD Secretariat and the global mechanism to simplify and update reporting tools for the 2022 reporting process. These efforts reflect a growing commitment to improving the effectiveness of the Convention's implementation. However, we must acknowledge with concern that significant gaps remain, particularly in the improvement of living conditions for affected communities. The EU and member states emphasize the urgent need for action to address land degradation, hold the worsening impacts of drought, and tackle the interconnected challenges of food insecurity, migration, and conflict. Also, we reaffirm the importance of ensuring the protection of land tenure rights, particularly for marginalized groups, and emphasize the necessity of meaningful participation in decision-making processes. Additionally, we recognize the growing frequency and intensity of droughts, further exacerbated by climate change, and urge global solidarity to mitigate the devastating effects. Through the 4 strategic objectives outlined in the 2018-2030 strategic framework of the UNCCD, the EU and member states continue to advocate for enhanced efforts in halting the land conversion, promoting sustainable land and water management, and supporting nations in their path towards land degradation neutrality. We also call for continued improvement in financial monitoring, resource mobilization, and enhanced cooperation to close the funding gaps hindering the Convention's goals. As we move forward, we acknowledge the positive steps taken to integrate SDG 15 into the Convention's implementation framework, particularly through the setting of ambitious refined land degradation neutrality targets. These efforts not only support drought resilience, but also align with global initiatives such as the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration and the Decade on Combating Sand and Dust Storms. The EU and member states acknowledging the efforts made by the parties to refine their voluntary land degradation neutrality targets, we emphasize the importance of making these targets more specific, time-bound, and integrated into national development frameworks. This integration should ensure that the targets are gender-responsive and there is coordination across sectors such as agriculture, climate change, energy, and disaster risk reduction. Moreover, intersectoral collaboration at all levels is critical to prioritize desertification, land degradation, and drought in development plans and policies. The mobilization of financial resources remains a central challenge. While efforts by the global mechanism and other financial institutions, such as the Global Environment Facility, Green Climate Fund, and private sector partners are commendable, further mobilization is essential to close the resource gaps. In light of these challenges, the global mechanism, alongside relevant financial and technical partners, is requested to continue its support for parties in implementing resource mobilization strategy. This includes developing financing toolkits, building the capacity of parties in project development, and facilitating partnerships that enhance the CSO and private sector engagement in innovation. Furthermore, efforts to address biodiversity, climate change, and desertification in a synergic manner will be crucial for the success of these initiatives. Additionally, the Secretariat is urged to enhance its capacity for supporting data collection, monitoring, and reporting, as well as improved interoperability between data systems from other environmental conventions will be vital for tracking progress and ensuring that countries are on track to meet land degradation neutrality targets. The EU and member states underline the importance of capacity building to the effective implementation of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, especially Target 15.3. Finally, the EU and member states would like to recall that capacity building should be supported so as to promoting the enhanced synergies between Rio Conventions if implemented as appropriate in collaboration with other Rio processes, which could reduce costs and improve the overall approach to capacity building at all levels. Thank you, Chair.
I thank representative of European Union. I give the floor to representative of Argentina.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the panelists who've shown their experience and knowledge of the Convention. Firstly, the representative of WOCAT has explained the work which has been undertaken in conjunction with various UN agencies and universities. We've received your support in my country. This has helped us develop a system of indicators and land monitoring and evaluation system. I wanted to highlight this initiative because the link between science and land is very important. We can see good practices in land management. And to a certain extent, we've been able to share them on platforms that are devoted to this kind of initiative. Furthermore, we also heard the presentation from Mr. Patrick Burger from CARI, who detailed his experience of so many years attending this conference. And I think that he raised a key issue. We need to focus on the basics in this convention. We cannot hope to be effective if we spread ourselves too widely and too thinly. We need to focus on the three pillars: desertification, land degradation, and drought. We need to get back to the origins of this convention in order to ensure that the scarce funding that we have at our disposal will be able to support countries as they go about implementing the convention. So we need to make the most of those resources. And lastly, I would like to echo something which was said by Ecuador on behalf of my GRULAC region, which is to strengthen regional and sub-regional instances. It's very important for us for the next reporting period so that we have the right level of capacity on all aspects of the convention. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Argentina. I give the floor to the representative of Liberia.
Thanks, Chair. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great honor that Liberia takes the floor for the first time at this esteemed gathering of the Conference of the Parties to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. We extend our heartfelt gratitude and congratulations to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for its exemplary hospitality and successful hosting of COP16, providing a platform for nations to unite in addressing the critical challenges of land degradation and sustainable development. In line with the UNCCD's objectives and the Sustainable Development Goals, Liberia is committed to adopting a proactive, inclusive, and transformative approach to sustainable land and water management. We recognize the importance of achieving LDN and aligning our efforts with regional and global initiatives to build resilience against land degradation and drought. While acknowledging the impact of partnerships that are supporting Liberia in fulfilling our commitments under the UNCCD and other multilateral environmental agreements, we call upon international partners to support Liberia in enhancing technical and institutional capacities for sustainable land and water management. This includes capacity building for innovative fundraising to upskill our impact in combating land degradation and drought, access to training for our policymakers and local communities, the development of drought-resilient agricultural practices and systems, technology transfer, and the integration of gender-responsive strategies to land use policies. Our commitment extends to empowering youth and local communities through education and involvement in sustainable land and water management initiatives. By nurturing a culture of environmental stewardship, we aim to safeguard the land for future generations. Liberia seeks to embrace modern technologies in geospatial science, remote sensing, and learning opportunities for mapping degraded lands, monitoring and reporting restoration progress, and gathering and integration of impact data across the national landscape to drive policy actions. Liberia stands ready to contribute to the collective global effort to combat land degradation and foster sustainable development. However, we cannot do this alone. We urge the international community to prioritize equitable access to resources and technical assistance for developing countries, particularly those in Africa, as we strive toward a land degradation neutral world. In closing, let us reaffirm our shared responsibility and commitment to protect and to restore our planet's land resources. Together we can forge a sustainable future, leaving no one behind. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Liberia. I give the floor to the representative of Kazakhstan.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. My name is Murat Temirjanov, national focal point of the UNCCD in the Republic of Kazakhstan. Позвольте поделиться.
Allow me to share our views regarding the importance of targeted capacity building to ensure the successful implementation of the Convention to combat desertification. In the Republic of Kazakhstan, we understand that a comprehensive approach is needed to address land degradation. Therefore, our approach focuses on several key areas. At the national level, we've developed and continuously updated a national plan of action to address land degradation. Particular attention is given to the reclamation of rangeland and the rational land and water resource management, a geoinformation system and maps of resources are used to assess the state of the land and for risk prediction. At the sub-regional level, Kazakhstan actively cooperates with neighboring countries in Central Asia so as to address common challenges, such as sandstorms and land degradation. Regional initiatives, including projects to prevent trans-boundary sandstorms and the exchange of experience among countries, helps us to boost and coordinate efforts. At the international level, Kazakhstan is a reliable partner in the implementation of the Convention. We have joint projects with the WFF and FAO, which helps us to restore ecosystems, adapt to climate change, and protect biodiversity. Our participation in the UNCDD initiatives helps us to share best practice and consolidate international cooperation. We believe that so as to achieve the objectives of the Convention, we need to prioritize the implementation, the use of modern technology such as digital maps and GIS technology, which helps to improve monitoring of land resources. Strengthening cross-boundary cooperation between countries in the region also plays a critical role in addressing common ecological challenges. We continue to work on achieving the objectives of the Convention. We are ready to share our experience and learn from the international community. We are confident that through joint efforts and through sharing knowledge and technology transfer, we'll be able to make our planet greener and healthier. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Kazakhstan. I give the floor to the representative of Bolivian Republic of Venezuela.
Gracias.
Thank you, Chair. We endorse the statement made on behalf of the GRULAC Group, and I would also like to extend my greetings and thanks to the panelists for their contributions. In Venezuela, capacity building is an essential component in combating desertification and drought. Not only does it help prevent land degradation, but it also promotes resilience and the necessary cooperation so that we can tackle this critical environmental challenge. As a result, when we evaluate indicator 15.3 for land degradation neutrality, we have to have a high level of vegetation cover. This is reflected, though, in the actions that we have taken at community level regarding capacity building for various stakeholders. The aim is to prevent forest fires. This is through the unified command to combat forest fires and the weekly bulletins from the early warning system about forest fires. And we also implement our Land Act, and we also have urban and peri-urban agriculture. We have a regional planning for the coastal regions, and we also have the youth brigades for fighting climate change. So Venezuela recommends that the Convention Secretariat continues to build partnerships to foster capacity building within the framework of the Convention, notably when it comes to training and awareness raising on land degradation neutrality, combating drought, amongst others. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Bolivian Republic of Venezuela. I give the floor to the representative of Bahrain.
سيد الرئيس سيدات والسادة.
Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you all. The Kingdom of Bahrain reiterates its commitment to the implementation of the Convention, including by submitting national reports. This is absolutely vital for us to monitor our achievement of the Convention's aims and for ensuring long-term follow-up. We believe that reporting is the cornerstone of transparency. So it's vital that we build capacity through strengthening digital tools by expanding access as well to online tools. This will facilitate national level monitoring. We also think it's important to organize training courses. Notably, they could be in-person or online workshops on the various tools and indicators. And thirdly, we believe that regional partnerships should be built. There should be partnerships between countries so that we look at the good best practices of submitting reports. We must also provide the necessary technical and linguistic assistance through the appropriate translations. There must be translations into Arabic to ensure that the Convention's instruments are well known. And we should also take further measures such as developing specialized teaching materials, and we must also ensure that the advice provided to countries is adapted to their situation. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Bahrain. I now give the floor to Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, we wish to congratulate the UNCCD, its parties and institutions for the progress achieved in strengthening the capacity of governments and diverse stakeholder groups. At the 16th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to the CBD in Cali, Colombia, parties adopted a decision on capacity building that includes many aspects relevant to capacity building processes of the UNCCD. This decision, Decision 16/3, recognizes the important role of regional level implementation. Parties selected 18 regional and sub-regional scientific and support centers to assist countries in the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. These centers are currently developing their biennial programs of work, and the centers will play an important role in supporting countries in the peer-to-peer learning on NBSAP implementation, on upcoming reporting and review processes, resource mobilization, and specific capacity needs identified by the regions. Many of these centers are also active in UNCCD processes, which presents a unique opportunity for collaboration and synergies in capacity building activities at the regional level. At the CBD COP16, parties also welcomed the joint capacity building initiative of the 3 Rio Conventions, which we heard about earlier. This initiative is already in motion, and the CBD Secretariat looks forward to continuing to support it based on the mandates received from Cali, Colombia. We also would like to thank the UNCCD Secretariat and the Global Mechanism for their contribution to the guide on Target 2 of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which focuses on achieving restoration of 30% of degraded ecosystems by 2030. This contribution helped us to launch the guide at the Restoration Day in Gali and the recent launch of an e-learning course on the FAO e-Learning Academy platform. We would like to invite parties and stakeholders to engage in the course that will help to build the synergies between land degradation neutrality targets and NBSAPs, as well as between the reporting obligations. Thank you, Chair.
I thank the representative of Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. I give the floor to representative of civil society.
Thank you, Chair, distinguished delegates. On behalf of the accredited civil society organizations at COP16, we emphasize the importance of targeted capacity building as a fundamental pillar for advancing implementation of the UNCCD and achieving land degradation neutrality. Addressing desertification, land degradation, and drought requires equipping rights holders and stakeholders with the necessary skills, tools, and the knowledge to take meaningful, sustained action. We recommend the following priorities: support local leadership and knowledge, develop programs that empower local communities, indigenous people, women, youth, and grassroots organizations, and organizations work hand in hand with them to lead land restoration and sustainable management initiatives. Tailor capacity building activities to integrate traditional and local knowledge with scientific expertise. Enhance access to resources and training by providing accessible financial and technical resources to grassroots organizations and local actors. Support training programs on sustainable land management, drought resilience, and agroecological practices. 3 is to ensure that we strengthen multi-stakeholder collaboration, facilitate partnerships between governments, CSOs, academic institutions to co-create and share capacity building strategies and tools, promote knowledge exchange and cross-sectoral learning. 4, focus on technology and innovation, train rights holders and stakeholders on the use of innovative technologies such as remote sensing, geographical information systems, and early warning systems to monitor and mitigate DLL impacts effectively. Promote gender and social inclusion by designing capacity building initiatives that are gender responsive and inclusive, ensure meaningful, equitable participation and benefits for all, particularly groups in situations of vulnerability. Lastly, to measure the impact and adapt by establishing mechanisms to monitor the effectiveness of capacity building activities and adopt programs based on lessons learned and emerging trends. Targeted capacity building is indispensable for translating global commitments into local actions. We urge the parties to invest in inclusive, innovative, and sustained capacity building efforts to ensure the effective implementation of the Convention with meaningful participation from civil society organizations and right holders. Thank you.
I thank the representative of civil society. I will now like to give the panelists an opportunity to respond briefly to the points raised. I give the floor to Mr. Ullerman.
Distinguished delegates, thanks a lot for your interventions. I think the importance and need of capacity development is heard. Thanks a lot to the delegation from Argentina for actually explaining a little bit what experience you made with the decision support system on land degradation, which came a bit short in my presentation. Here I just would like to follow up what I started to say, that the experience we made with these countries and what we made with you will now in this new CHEF MSP project together with UNDP and UNCCD will be taken up again. We'll develop guidelines that will be available for all parties. And then some targeted countries, mainly focusing on hybrid areas and small island development states, will then receive a very specific training on these tools. And in the third component, then we will open up again for a South-South exchange workshop for all organizations that have not been, also those who have not been participated in the whole project. And thanks a lot also the delegate from Bahrain. We heard as well the request for additional teaching materials, and here I also just briefly would like to highlight that together with the G20 Global Land Initiative, we have developed a curriculum, Trigger Change, on innovative sustainable agricultural solution for land restoration with many hours of presentation, actually interactive sessions, case study solutions. This is open access for everybody. It's mainly focusing, targeting the universities, but this is one example of trainings and course materials that can be accessed and is available for free. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Aleman. I give the floor to Mr. Burger.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to thank you for all your inputs and comments. I would like to particularly thank Ecuador for emphasizing the provision of data. And on data, what I'd like to say is that we have a lot of data, but for it to be usable, you have to metabolize it, metabolize the data, that is to say, and to take the example of food, when you eat something, your body transforms food into energy so you can actually move. And when it comes to scientific data or available data, you have to metabolize it, transform it, so that we can actually take action. The European Union drew attention to financing. This is indeed a major problem. I spend a lot of time speaking with people or organizations which struggle to access financing. The reasons mentioned, including trust guarantees, transparency, etc. But this should not be a pretext for hampering access to financing. So perhaps here we could dig into this matter further so that all stakeholders, including countries, including civil society organizations, can have more access to financing. As regards Argentina, you explained, and I agree here, that we need to concentrate on the topics we address and not become distracted from our objectives. When it comes to Liberia and Kazakhstan, you spoke about sharing. Yes, we do need to share, and we do not share enough. I think sharing our commitment, sharing our experience, and perhaps this needs to be done in a more structured manner so that we can share what we know and share what we do not know. That is perhaps the most important thing. Because there are many things that we do not understand. Perhaps some of us do understand these factors, but in any case, we need to share this knowledge. Venezuela spoke about training, awareness raising, and Bahrain explained that it's necessary to focus on the needs of each country. Indeed, we do need to contextualize capacity building. Capacity building needs to apply depending on the context of each country. And lastly, as regards the statement by civil society organization representatives, will not reiterate what she said, but I would like to restate that we are faced with certain challenges. Either we will achieve our objectives together or we will fail separately. I think that's a good way of framing the issue. I would urge you to work together, continue working together. These capacity building initiatives can bring us together in substance and in form and in the solutions that we can actually implement jointly. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Burger. We have thus concluded this stage of our consideration of Agenda Item 2 and Sub-Item D. Before adjourning the meeting, I wish to remind participants that the 5th meeting of the committee will take place tomorrow, Tuesday, 10 December at 10 a.m. in this room. I also wish to remind delegation present today to submit their credential to the legal office in Area B, office number 11. Further information can be found in the journal of the conference. Furthermore, delegation are advised that following the limited progress in the contact group and following consultation with the Bureau of Conference, the plenary meeting on Tuesday afternoon has been cancelled. Please also be advised that the plenary meeting on Wednesday afternoon has been rescheduled to Thursday. Further information will be included in the Journal of Conference. The meeting is adjourned.